Welcome to another broadcast of the Deborah Ruffini Show on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are archived. You can find them at ArtistFirst.com. And now, from England, here she is, your host, Deborah Ruffini.
Greetings from England. This is Deborah Ruffini with another edition of the Deborah Ruffini Show. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Christy Parker, speaker, consultant and author specialising in recognising and dealing with toxic people. A subject very close to my heart, and maybe it is yours too. Glad to have you with us, Christy. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's great. It's a privilege to have you with us. Great line of work to be in.
It is very dear to my heart as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, something like this is not something we do out of just to be in a job.
You want to help other people, yes.
Oh, that's brilliant. Very rewarding. Can I ask why this is an area close to your heart, Christy?
Well, about 20 years ago, I was busy devoting some time to volunteer work, especially in a local church, and I started working with a volunteer who was a leader over certain programs. And I found that she was extremely controlling, judgmental, demeaning, manipulative, and I found that other people were frustrated with her behavior, but they weren't doing anything about it. They were very passive,
right?
And nobody was really talking about it. They're just saying this is just how she is, and dealing with it, but they really weren't, because behind the scenes, that's all they could talk about was the behavior and how it was affecting them.
Right.
And it was very, frustrating from both sides, the passive and also the aggressive behavior from her.
Sure.
So I basically wanted to go into psychology or behavioral studies to figure this out. You know, why is this happening? Why are people seeing this behavior and yet letting it get out of control? So I went into several different degrees that have to do with behavior, and 10 years later I came out with my information that's in my studio casts on YouTube to help people.
Wow. Yes, sometimes it does take experience, doesn't it, just to see what we can hear second hand of a situation, but when we've experienced something ourselves,
yes,
it takes us to realise something.
Experience is the greatest teacher. I did feel like over that 10-year time, I specifically had situations or people that would come into my life with different types of toxic behavior. Sometimes it even went in line with what classes I was taking. And I really, this is a Christian radio.
Oh,
right. So
yeah.
Talk about God, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Yeah.
I specifically had these experiences, and I knew that it was God putting these situations in my life so that I could experience them, figure them out, and then eventually figure out what to do about it so I could help other people. Because I knew people were going crazy. They didn't need to.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult, isn't it? And sometimes I think people can make you believe things that aren't true and kind of make you question your sanity.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
There's such a thing as called gaslighting.
I've heard of gaslighting.
Yeah. A lot of toxic people will use gaslighting. You'll be in a conversation with them, and they'll have lies within lies. They'll even, it's really kind of hard to remember every single thing somebody says in a conversation, so they are actually quite brilliant at going back and saying what they didn't say, or they didn't mean that, or whatever, and they get you twisted in this maze, and it's really hard to get back out.
It is hard, isn't it? It's one thing I've got a good opportunity to ask you now, because it's something that I find quite fascinating. I've been in situations before where people have lied quite wildly about the most ridiculous thing that even a child would see through, and then they've sort of told lie upon lie to kind of cover the previous lie, and it's just got out of hand, and it's kind of insulting for the receiver, where you think, do they really think I'm that stupid? I mean, do gaslighters, do they not feel embarrassed when they tell a lie where they just can't run with it anymore, and they must know that you know the truth about it?
Right. That is baffling to people who have a conscience and who want to be deemed in good light in other people's minds. And people who are sociopaths or psychopaths of one degree or another, it could be very small degree or very large degree, but they basically lack remorse.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they have this pervasive lying and deceptive behavior, and it's all based on getting their needs met. They don't really care what people think about them.
Really? That's interesting.
The beginning stages of it is often seen in teenage years in something called ODD, or oppositional defiant disorder.
Right.
And it can get worse and worse based on not just the family that they're in, but the culture that they're in, if that culture allows for them to behave that way. So it can become a sociopathic personality, which
right.
is a mental disorder, which, it's really tough to change that once that becomes a way the brain is actually set up. And then what's worse is something called psychopath, where they actually not only are oppositional to societal rules, but they actually will act like they are following them and be charismatic and use charm along with dishonesty. So that's the difference. Usually somebody who's, really oppositional and they lie that they're even lying, that is different than somebody who uses it to deceive people through charm. And that's when you get into the psychopath.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've heard these words, but I didn't really know that, how to differentiate what they actually mean.
Yeah. It can be difficult. Sometimes I have to go back and look at my notes just to remember the exact difference.
Oh, so they feel there's no sort of embarrassment there? Because I know if I told, I mean, fortunately I don't lie, but if I told the sort of lies I've been told, and someone actually, if the evidence is produced that this is a downright lie and you just can't go anywhere with this now, I think I would just be really embarrassed and not want to have contact with the person anymore, because I'd be feeling too silly.
Right. Well, and that does happen. There are people who have, they aren't yet, or they aren't psychopaths or sociopaths. They're just chronic liars. That is also a separate disorder. And they can actually, what they do is they skip from relationship to relationship, or city to city, because they do feel like, oh, they've figured me out, or, I've told too many lies, or I've had too many problems here, so I need to move on. So, like I said, there's different levels of having that conscience in behaviors. And the problem is that you do have to experience them to get to that point. But my YouTube videos, I do explain that there are ways to figure it out earlier on. There are ways.
Yeah, your YouTube videos are very enlightening, and I learned so much by watching those. And I always assumed the word narcissist was just kind of a bitchy word to, be nasty about. So I had no idea that narcissism was an actual thing.
Right. Well, it has gone in and out of the diagnostic book. I think they put it back in because people were still using it and it still made sense. But it was taken out of the book for a while, and they had some other word for it. But narcissist just rolls off the tongue, and it absolutely makes sense for what it is. So in psychopathology and sociopathology, there is narcissism.
Right.
You can have a narcissist who isn't a psychopath or sociopath.
All right.
Selfish. They're just selfish. They have selfish tendencies. They can overcome it because it's not necessarily a pervasive disorder in their brain yet. It's just a pattern of behavior that they're used to using what they want.
Oh, right. Well, so there is help out there, but I guess it's acknowledging that one needs help before actually getting it for themselves.
Yeah, often they don't seek out help, though. It comes in the form of consequences from other people. So you can see why I was distressed that this person was never going to change that kind of sent me in this direction of this research. Because nobody was setting any boundaries. Nobody was speaking up and saying, this is really inappropriate. You shouldn't be acting like this. And
right.
The leaders over her were actually allowing her the ability to just remove certain volunteers that she didn't like. It wasn't, it wasn't based on, well, we're just going to use your volunteers or place them where we can have them serve. She was basically systematically removing people if they did not do what she told them to do.
Oh, my God.
And, with volunteers, you get what you get.
Yeah.
You really can't hire and fire like that, or you're going to lose people from the cause that you are working on. And that's what began to happen. And, it wasn't until later on when she had to move away that even then it was a struggle for her. Because when she moved away, she was released from this position, and I was actually placed in that position instead. And I had some what we call counselors that help out, or other volunteers that are placed in assistance positions. I found out like a year later that one of my assistants, after she'd been released from this position, called up my assistant and secretly met with her to tell her everything that she needed to do while she was gone, while she was my assistant.
Oh,
instead of following what I now was going to do, or what I was kind of putting forth in this organization, she was constantly challenging it based on this other former leader's information. So they can disrupt even after they're gone.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some people it's kind of, everything is either their way or no way.
Right. Call a megalomaniac.
Oh, is it?
Found out is what she is. And I hope that she's able to overcome. I don't know where she is now. I don't know her situation after leaving, but I really do hope that she was able to get help, because I found out later that for years, even before my experience with her, she had been to many psychologists to try to get help for this.
Oh, right.
Right. And so, megalomaniacs, they just have this severe need to be in complete control of everything and have everything their way. Like a dictator. She was basically a mini dictator over this organization.
My goodness. So is it considered a form of weakness in their eyes if they've got something wrong or incorrect, or maybe their idea isn't the best way?
Right. It can be. So in my research, I found that there were different things that, like when they were children, that contributed to their different toxic behavior. Some children became toxic because of the environments they were in. They were taught to be toxic, or they had to react in a toxic way to stop the toxic abuse against themselves.
Oh.
So it's a natural inclination now that they've learned. Now, some children are born this way.
All right.
They found that sociopaths or psychopaths specifically, they're finding that they are born this way, and the family can contribute to it with the bad behavior, but they can also make it worse by being overly strict.
Okay.
Rules with too many, controlling the child, and then they rebel against it. So it can be either or, and also the research shows that it's not really the family that can stop a child from being a psychopath if they're born that way. It's really up to society and the societal rules, because once that child is out of the house, really is what society lets happen to them. Like this woman, she had found a city, an organization with a church that had some passive leaders, so she was able to completely take over and control.
Oh, I bet.
Of everything. That's what I was working with this woman. So, that there's nothing that her family could do about that, because, she's an adult now, and society where she was living, the culture she was living, and was allowing that. So we actually have in the Western world, we have a very high percentage of psychopaths around us. I'm pretty sure it's like 5 to 6 for every 100 people.
Oh, that's a lot.
And it's the Eastern cultures that do not have as many psychopaths, because their cultures are more strict in what behaviors they allow.
Oh, that says more control, really.
Yeah, there is more control, but they also have a way of teaching, even they're young, that's different than Western. They teach that there are consequences to the environment for your behavior. There's consequences to even animals and the ecosystem. And so it's almost like the psychopath is getting an understanding of their place in the world, whereas we're just teaching our children in the Western world to just get out there and be assertive and go get your, what you want and have your needs met. So there's something to be learned from the Eastern cultures there.
Yeah. My goodness, yeah. It's funny talking about this. I found that people who is my way, that's the only way, there's no other way. Quite often when they're speaking with you, they will say, or speaking at you, they will
Exactly.
They will kind of say things like, even the wording can make a big difference, can't it? They will say things like, you need to, rather than, it may be a good idea if...
Yes.
It's funny, isn't it? It's like...
There's no suggestions involved. There's no, giving of information to help you. You might want to try this.
Yeah.
It's black and white to them, what you should do. That's the narcissism, and then they cannot put themselves in other people's shoes.
Oh, right.
This way is the way that you must go and do.
That's right. Is there part of this where they've almost already made up their mind that you're going to be wrong, whatever your thoughts, whatever your idea or your way of doing things are?
They can't even think outside the box. Their box. They only see their way. And even when you're talking, you're not really metabolizing it or even thinking that it's a possibility to do that. And then if there's narcissism mixed in it, it's a battle. It's now become, we're not going to do your way, and I'm going to figure out how to do it my way.
Oh, that is really... It's hard to believe, isn't it, for people like us that wouldn't dream of being that way. It's hard to believe.
No, and that's why it's so hard for us to see, people who are what I call feelers, or, have extreme high conscience or perception of what other people are feeling, and we would not hurt a fly,
Yeah.
So it's hard for us to be able to put ourselves in their shoes even, and say, oh, well, I just want everything done my way, and I don't care who I hurt. I don't care if I hurt your feelings.
Oh.
It is very hard to understand.
It is. It's very sad. You almost feel sorry for them. You can sort of get a little bit angry at first, but you can end up, just sort of feeling, very sorry for them. It's
right, if you're not angry with them.
Yeah.
It takes many years to be able to forgive, especially when if you are somebody who is very sensitive and want to make sure that you're not hurting anybody, you're going to have the type of personality that has to work on forgiving this type of behavior in other people.
Yeah. The whole thing is baffling. There's been a few situations where people close to me, that they've been very rude and critical and unremorseful about it, and kind of putting me down. It can even be things like, you haven't got your hair right on this occasion, or you should be wearing that, or and they've seen me upset to the point of crying sometimes, and they would justify what they've said or what they've done rather than say, oh, I'm so sorry about that, you're clearly very upset. And then they have the cheek to say, you're too sensitive, or you're giving me a negative relationship. And then another classic one has been...
So they're getting the consequences for their behavior, and they're blaming you for that reaction.
And they really believe that. It's not they honestly believe this.
Right. Well, in one case, I had to deal with somebody who had all these traits, and then on top of that was sadistic. Enjoyed seeing people suffer.
Ooh,
dear. See a smirk on their face when they would needle somebody or just say something very inappropriate, and it was always done publicly. A game to them, yes. And so when you put in a level of sarcasm with that, they've learned how to humiliate you in front of other people, and they get laughs from people, and so it just feeds their ego, and they love causing other people pain in order to get what they want. But sometimes they just enjoy causing the pain. That's a sadistic behavior. And the interesting thing about sadism is that it passes from one generation to the next. It's not something that people are born with. It's not like something wrong with the brain. It's actually a behavior that's passed down from one generation to the next.
Wow.
Yeah. That's
interesting. Wouldn't have known that.
I watched it. This person for years just humiliate people in public, and then I met their mother.
Oh, I see.
Exactly the same. It was interesting to see. So, like I said, it was like I would be studying certain things, and then certain people would come into my life or into an organization I was working with. And it's like I had this little experience so that I could understand it more clearly.
Oh, I bet. Shone more light on it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes when you do receive an apology, it's a very... the apology can almost be, I'm sorry you feel that way, rather than I'm sorry what I've done.
Yes, yes. That is very true.
Still putting the emphasis on it's your problem,
Yes. Exactly.
It's very, very sad.
Yeah, it's almost, in some cases, like, how dare you give me a consequence, or a negative reaction, or just giving you the truth, right? What they see is their truth, but often what they're giving you is a negative truth, and they never give the positive truth, ever.
Oh.
Like, it almost pains them to give a compliment. Or if they are getting a compliment, it means that they're a sociopath who's trying to use charm to get what they want. So it's tricky.
Wow.
You know what? You kind of, if you're a feeling personality where you can kind of feel like you sense somebody's intention, you have to learn to trust that. And then through years of research, I figured out ways of dealing with these type of situations. And also you have to kind of grow a thick skin because sometimes you're going to have to say something in public to somebody who's toxic only in public. Their greatest joy is to beat you up in public emotionally or mentally or to show their power over you. And you kind of have to stand up to them, not, in a rage or anything. You just say, I just really don't like that. And that can be very hard for somebody who's like, well, I wouldn't like it if somebody said that to me.
Yeah.
So you it almost pains you to set that boundary, even to just say that. And so you have to kind of grow the thick skin of, I need to protect myself. And I need to teach this person that I don't like being treated this way. And you have to begin to, they always want to put themselves in a place of power. And the best way to take that power away is to calmly respond back to them, which can be very difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
But when you calmly respond to them, like, can you please stop doing that? They almost, and it's out of character because they think they have you pinned down for what your reactions are going to be. So when you start doing that, they kind of go, they kind of like take a second look at their behavior. It helps them to actually kind of take a look in the mirror because there's no negative behavior coming back to them. The thing with a toxic person is they aren't really paying attention to how they're coming across.
Right.
They're looking at how you are coming across. So when you come back at them aggressively, when you finally are fed up, they're only going to see your negative behavior. And let's say you, every once in a while, get, kind of overboard or upset about something, and let's say it's like maybe 10% of your life that you exhibit negative emotions. And they, on the other hand, probably exhibit negative or toxic emotions, toxic behavior 90% of the time.
Right.
They will hone in on your 10% toxic behavior and just beat you up with it. And you have to be able to pull yourself up out of that and say, yes, I did make a mistake, or yes, I didn't do that perfectly, but you don't do it perfectly 90% of the time. And that really stuns them a lot of the time when you do that. I've never really, when I've had to deal with somebody that severe, it stuns them, and it stops them, and in one case, they actually just kind of smirk like, yeah, you got me.
Oh, so there is hope for them listening. Sorry.
Yeah, it's interesting with psychopaths.
Wow. Does it, maybe a silly question, but does it feel rewarding for you as a therapist, kind of, whenever you see a breakthrough and the person's kind of, oh my goodness, what have I been like? All the people I've hurt. Does it feel good?
Oh, you mean?
No.
Oh, with other people. Well, see, I'm not really a therapist. I'm a coach.
Okay, sorry.
So I do coaching classes. I taught through the community here.
I'm with you. Sorry.
For years, and so what was interesting is I geared the class toward helping passive people become more assertive with toxic people. And I found that half the participants sometimes basically were there to learn how to not be toxic. And so I found that quite interesting because I kind of had to, in the middle of the class, kind of gear some of the points toward how they could overcome being toxic. And I thought they were very brave, actually. Several times they just raise their hand right in the middle of the class and say, I'm actually here because I think I'm a toxic person and I want to change. And in that case, it's usually somebody who has had something happen with somebody else, and they're finally waking up to, I think this is me, and I cared about this person enough, and this is damaging the relationship. In one case, it was a woman who she was realizing that she was around a lot of toxic people, but she wasn't necessarily toxic. So their behavior was rubbing off on her, and she realized she had to separate from that group. So in most of the cases where somebody does this, it's somebody who doesn't have a strong mental illness of being a sociopath or psychopath.
Oh, right.
It's like a bad habit that they have. And I do have a booklet that goes with the YouTube video that some people call me up and purchase, and that has in the back of it a survey so that they can check off the behavior that they're seeing in the person, and it helps them to understand what category to put that person in. It's kind of like learning how to be a psychologist.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, and like one person who thought, I think this person's a psychopath, when she went through the list, she realized that there was more hope for this person because it was just negative traits or negative bad habits that they had.
Oh.
Sometimes it can be difficult, like, a lot of times when people are going through psych degrees, the professors will tell them, you're going to probably try to read your whole family and friends and start seeing the most severe, labeling ones with the most severe mental disorders. And so one teacher in particular showed us the difference between, this is somebody with a bad habit that seems like they have this disorder, and this is all out what this other person has, and this is what it looks. So we were able to gauge more clearly what that behavior is, and that's what I've done with this survey. It's very difficult for people to know this information unless they have gone through 10 years of school like I have, and I wanted to make it easier for them. So that's why I created this survey, so that they could more easily figure this out. And then once you start going through the survey a lot more, it becomes a habit of being able to discern and figure out what you have in front of you when a person comes into your life. And then of course on the video there are the tips on how to deal with them or spot them more easily, because a lot of times people after the fact will say, there were signs, there were things that I didn't, that I picked up on, but I just didn't believe, or there were signs there and I just didn't pay attention to them, or I didn't piece the puzzles together to see the pattern of behavior.
Yeah, and I guess if we like to think the best of people, it can sometimes it can slowly creep up. Can't there could be kind of symptom again on top of symptom on top of symptom.
That's where you get into trouble with projection. So psychologists talk about projection. So what projection is in a negative way is let's say a pathological liar meets somebody who is not a pathological liar, and the person is being honest with them and telling them some fantastical thing. Well, the pathological liar immediately does not believe it because they are projecting their own ability to lie onto that person. They think everybody around them is doing the same as them.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of like what projection is. You are projecting who you are onto other people. Now, the negative part of that, when you, like those people that I said that were being passive with this megalomaniac, they are projecting onto her their good intentions. Oh, she's doing some good, so it's fine. She gets a lot of work done, so it's fine.
Ah.
Right?
Yeah, kind of excusing.
The bad thing is that good people project their good intentions onto other people, thinking those people also have good intentions. And we know that that's just not true. There are people in the world who go about destroying other people. They enjoy actually hurting other people. So that's what I often have to teach people who I would say are naive in understanding, and I was naive at one time. Like I said, I couldn't understand why certain people were just, like you said, how do you not feel remorse over being caught in doing what you just did? What I just, basically figured out. And they just don't. They just move on past it because there's no remorse.
Oh, that's really awful. It is hard to. This has been most helpful, Christy. I mean, just watching your YouTube clips just blew me away. And the first one I saw, that's why I wanted to speak with you in the first place, because it's almost like you could read the people that have been in my life. So she's met these people.
Well, that's the thing about gaining the skills to deal with them. After a while, it just starts repeating itself,
Yeah.
There's only a specific amount of behaviors out there that are bad, thank goodness. And after a while, you spot them more easily. And that's why when I put that information out there, everybody's like, oh my gosh, I totally understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So when you learn the skills to be able to spot them and deal with them, it just becomes like clockwork, just much easier to deal with them. And when you learn one ability to do that, it works on the next person and the next person. And thank goodness.
Well, yeah.
But it does take a certain level of understanding it. Like explained in the YouTube video that one of the first things to do is to quietly remove yourself from the conversation or from whatever, to see if it like even strikes them that you don't like what's being said. I gave some stories in that, but people can go watch that to figure that out. But sometimes when you detach yourself from a conversation, a sensitive person or somebody who just has a bad habit of maybe telling stories that are inappropriate about you will notice that, and they'll, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't be saying that.
Ah.
So that's like kind of the first step. And if you're noticing that that's not happening with somebody, they're just completely clueless. They're not even paying attention to the nonverbal signs that you're giving that you do not like what is being said about you or about somebody else. You have to go to the next step. And sometimes you have to do it publicly, because if you tell them later on, I really didn't like that story that you told, they're like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, right.
Right. So often, with a severely toxic person, you have to tell them in front of everybody, I really don't want that story told.
Yeah.
And you have to be okay with other people being uncomfortable with that moment of you saying, let's not talk about that.
Yeah.
Can you not talk about our finances in front of other people?
Oh, sure, yes.
Things like that. So I give tips for that in the video, like comments to say, in some cases, if it's somebody who's being aggressive, you have to be able to say, stop doing that. It's just a command. You have to learn to give them a command. Now, if it's depending on the situation and the person, sometimes you can just give a request. But if you give a request and the person says, well, I did it because you, then they're not ready for a request. Right? They're still in that blaming mode. And so you have to give them a command.
Okay, that was interesting.
It's almost like you're reparenting them. And you're saying, do not do that to me again. Do not humiliate me in public. It's a command. And you're not doing it in an aggressive way. Just do it in a very assertive way, like a parent would, or should.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to do that. And sometimes you have to attach a consequence with that. I'm really not interested in going out on double dates with you anymore with other people because you tell embarrassing stories about me. And, And then maybe the next time they want to go out with other friends, you say, not this time. Because last time you humiliated me.
That's fair enough. And it can install a fear, can't it? You can sort of get fearful of going out in public or...
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or even just going up to see the person. I remember I was in a real state once, waiting at a train station. There was a lovely... Bless her, there was a lovely lady came up to me with a coffee, said, "Are you all right, love?" And that was so sweet. And that was because this was a strange thing. I don't know if this is common. But the person I was seeing, if I failed to follow the instruction I was given, they would do something like... for example, hurt me in some way, or not just verbally a negative thing, but it would be some sort of, on this particular occasion, start pushing my cuticles back because, angrily, because I had failed to see how they had loaded the dishwasher. And I don't have a dishwasher, I do my washing up by hand. But it was something silly like that. I was useless because I forgot to put, is there a little cleaning capsule or something that goes in? So I needed to be punished, and it was a physical, okay, it wasn't a slap round the head, but it was, you're rubbish, and look, you can't even do your cuticles right. Look at your nails, you're not even getting this right.
Yeah.
That was weird.
They start doing that with petty things. That's something that I call a petty complaint.
All right.
Really... It has nothing to do with your character. It has nothing to do. It's just something that you didn't have time to do because you're focusing on something else, maybe. But really, they're being petty in order to place you below them.
Oh, that's what that's all about. Yeah.
Yeah, they need you to be beneath. Yes.
It's almost like picking holes for the sake of it. Oh my goodness, can you not find anything else wrong?
Yeah, exactly.
It's tiring.
They do get quite petty, and it's constant. Like I said, and sometimes they'll say, "Well, I'm just stating the facts or stating the truth, so I'm just trying to help," and they're not, and that's the lie, because they never or rarely will they say positive compliments.
Right.
When that starts happening, they might have said them in the beginning when they first met you. But then you find out later on that was, charm that they're using.
Oh.
One thing I wanted to talk about is borderline disorder. Borderline disorder does that a lot. What they do is they'll use anything to get what they want. So they will switch from seduction to charm, because that's the funnest and easiest way to get what they want. And then when they don't get what they want, or they don't get your support, or you don't agree with them, they will switch to instant anger.
Oh.
Instant just negativity. And they'll switch back and forth, almost like bipolar disorder. And it's not... Now, bipolar disorder is where they switch back and forth because there's a chemical imbalance in the brain, we've found. But with borderline disorder, they're actually doing it on purpose to get what they...
That's very sad. So it's a deliberate...
Back and forth. They'll be super angry, and then all of a sudden they become super complimentary and seductive.
One extreme to the other.
And it drives people crazy. Even psychologists. A lot of psychologists won't work with borderline disorder because then they start doing it to the therapist.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, it's extremely difficult to deal with. So a lot of people who are dealing with, somebody who they feel like is making them crazy, it's usually borderline disorder, narcissism, and, the psychopath or sociopath at some level that they're dealing with.
Oh, my goodness.
There's like 5 to 6 for every 100 people, that you're around. That's quite a bit.
Yeah.
About it. Like, if you're on the highway or freeway or, driving somewhere and you have, every once in a while you'll see this crazed driver, or road rage, we call it. I don't know if you have that word.
Yeah, road rage, yeah.
But Okay, yeah. So, road rage. These people, a lot of times, they have these disorders. You'll see them in the way that they drive. They're behind you flashing their lights, even though you're going, above the speed limit. They want you to go faster than the speed limit, than you are speeding over the speed limit. And they could even have like a lane to the right or left that they could go around you. But no, they want to stay in their lane, and they're going to make you pay for having slowed them down. This is kind of like that behavior inside of a car. They just don't care. They only want their way. And they're even worse on social media because there's this anonymity, and they feel like they can just say whatever they want. There's no, they just don't care. So we see on the road, we see in social media.
That makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, just horrible comments being said. And sometimes they're not even their accounts. This is a big thing where there's fake social media accounts, and so they get on and they just fire away at anybody on social media and community pages and things like that, and create this toxic environment. And they just love it because nobody knows who they are.
Yes, anonymous. Yeah. Talk to us a bit about explosive personality disorder, Christy.
Right. Now, intermittent explosive disorder, which I explained in the video, that is oftentimes a problem with the frontal lobe.
Right.
And that is a lot of those people. So 93% of psychopaths are in jail, right? I mean, that's where most of them end up, living with each other, and a lot of those are the abusive ones, and some of them, it could be just a problem of their frontal brain lobe being damaged, and you could say yes, it's not really their fault, but they still need to be put in some type of containment to keep them from behaving that way on the general public. Now, there are classes that some people can take, anger management classes, if it's not a prefrontal lobe problem, and it's just a bad habit. They're just used to using anger to get what they want. They're like, they've gone from, they probably grew up in a home where there was a lot of anger used, or they had parents who were passive who never gave them boundaries. And so they just get whatever they want. Those are the kids that you see, like they scream for anything in the store, and the parents give them whatever they want to make them quiet down. And so they're giving them ice cream at home to get them to do things. And so this child has learned that I can use anger to get whatever I want. And especially as they become an adult, they're out in the world, they specifically target people who are passive in relationships. And then it slowly becomes, it might start off as emotionally and mentally kind of toxic, or it's up and down. There's a cycle of abuse that some people get sucked into. They love this person, and so they're willing to, just kind of go along with the ride. And then one day it becomes abusive physically. And
my goodness.
So one of the reasons why I specifically wanted to do this is because a lot of times people say, well, it's just the way they are. And, or, it's, but it's just, they just do this or they just do that. Well, it's not just going to be that, because they're going to up the ante. They are going to move into manipulating you more or doing more abusive things. What if you have children with them? How's this person going to react when a child isn't doing what they want them to do? Okay, so as soon as you start seeing patterns of behavior that are emotionally and mentally toxic, you need to either distance yourself from this person or set boundaries, because it's going to get worse if you don't. It's not going to get better. Being nice does not stop them. It doesn't. Remember, there's this sadism in them sometimes, or this lack of remorse. They just don't care if you see the cycle. They really don't. They just care that the cycle gets them back into good graces every single time. And so, if somebody becomes physically abusive, that's when you need to draw the line. That's the big red flag of this is not a good fit.
Yeah.
Relationship-wise. All right.
Yeah. And I guess it's...
I just really hope that people go and watch the videos, especially Studio Cast 1 and 3, because number 2 is for people in the business world. If you're dealing with toxic people in the business world, then watch number 2. But I really, and they're free. They weren't for a time. People were purchasing them, and then after a while, I just, I'm like, I just want this out to the general public. So, and I also do coaching, just on a few topics. I don't, I'm not a licensed therapist, but I do coach people in assertiveness training. But please go view those so that, and it's probably found online under emotional ethics.
Yeah, so your website is emotionalethics.com.
Well, actually, I don't have the website anymore.
Sorry.
I'm solely on Facebook and on YouTube. I found that I did not need the website, and I also have focused a lot of my time on another website and organization that stops violence, abuse, and sex trafficking.
Oh, that's brilliant.
I'm kind of focused on that right now, and I just do emotional ethics on the side.
Yeah.
But yes, please. I don't really gain anything from it monetarily. I want the information out there for people so that they can be saved early on from a disastrous relationship. It has the tips to take to test people for toxicity, and it also gives you the tips for what to say line by line with specific types of personalities. It's all on there. I don't want people to suffer.
Oh, that's wonderful. No, that just goes to show what a caring nature you have. It's because when we've been on the receiving end, it can make us quite passionate against this sort of thing, can't it? It's heartbreaking. It destroys individual lives. It destroys families' lives. It's just an awful thing. And but yeah, thank you so much for what you do. And it's been great talking with you. And thank you so much for coming on and for enlightening us and sharing, well advising us.
Thank you.
And keep up the good work.
For the opportunity, I want to be able to get the word out there, and I really appreciate you contacting me.
Oh, thank you. Well, no, that's what I thought. I must. If this woman will come on the show, I must get her because she's brilliant and she can save so many others from going through this. And that's wonderful. Yeah, to the listeners as well. Don't suffer in silence. Well, don't suffer at all. Manipulation is wrong. And
right. Yeah, and I guess one other thing, if I can add, is the third studio cast talks about how even when you get them out of your life, you have to learn how to not ruminate on that behavior, because it's like they're destroying your health and your mental health and your physical health and your immune system.
Oh, yeah.
Even when they're gone. So there's tips there for learning how to not ruminate on the negative behavior and how you were treated, and it gives information scientifically for why being around toxic people is destructive to your health and actually shrinks parts of your brain. So.
Oh, that's nice. Yes, Christy's YouTube videos are very. I enjoyed that bit in particular because it's like, oh my goodness, realizing that the effect it can have on us. We're just thinking, we just feel a bit stressed, and this is serious, serious stuff.
It is.
But yeah, so we'll have the YouTube links if that's okay on the webpage.
Oh, perfect.
Is that okay,
perfect.
Christy? Yeah,
yes.
Wonderful.
Yes, perfect.
Oh, thank you so much, Christy, for being with us. It's really been a pleasure to speak with you. And on a personal note, you've helped me immensely, as I'm sure you will help many viewers.
Right.
So thanks for tuning in, folks. Until next time, lots of love God bless you.